Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Engineers podcast. Today I'm super excited to be joined by Joao Fernandes, who's at Hopin, who I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners would have seen Hopin's journey over the last 18 months. So, Joao, lovely to have you on board. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Elliot. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a true pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. We're not going to talk too much football today.
No, we're not.
We won't go offline again and start talking about that. So let's dive into a little bit about you and your background, and then we'll get into the meat of who Hopin are. So do you want to just give us a quick intro on you, your background as an engineering leader? Help set the scene
Sure.
for us.
Sure, yeah, like not trying to kill people with boredom about my own life, but I studied computer science by trade. I studied here in Lisbon, so where I live in Portugal. I specialized in distributed systems. I started my career abroad in Czech Republic, where I lived more or less 2 years. I was working for a fairly known company in the US called Honeywell. It's quite a large company. It's one of General Electric's biggest competitors. It's not super well known here in Europe, but I worked in avionics 2 years, quite a large company, completely different from what I ended up doing for most of my professional life. So 2 years later, came back to Lisbon for professional reasons. And since then, I've been connected in one way or another to the startup / scale up world. Cool. So actually, my first startup was in 2014. So I joined, the company was already 2 years old. It's called Talkdesk. Yeah. I joined when we were I was the fourth engineer, joining the team. We're 8 people, more or less, give or take, at the day I joined. And 2 years later, we're 250 or something like that. So I also went through that was my first hyper growth experience. These days, they have 1,000 people, quite a large company. That was my first, hyper growth. I learned a lot. It was a really good school. It was a super intense experience, and I think that in many ways it shaped the engineer that I came to be.
Okay.
Since then, I've been in multiple other, startups, scale ups. Some founded by Portuguese people, some not, American, British, and indeed, right now I'm an engineering manager at Hopin. Okay. So I joined Hopin last year in April, so April 2020. Yeah, we were about 30 people when I joined. I was engineer number 14. So I have employee ID number 4 at the company, but it's fake. So I can tell it this openly. I'm actually not employee number 4. But somehow I got it. I don't know. The HR redid the system and I got ID
14 at Hopin, 4 at Talkdesk.
Yes, exactly. Yes, more or less like that. Yeah. So yeah, it was a very different company from what it is today. So indeed, Hopin, definitely one of the hottest startups of 2020 and 2021. So it's as I joined, it was a virtual events platform. As of today, it is an events platform. So it is more than just a virtual events platform. So today we target more than just virtual events. And so I actually joined as an individual contributor. When I joined, there was no engineering managers, so there was no management team in the engineering side of things. So, and that was the ultra compelling part of the Hopin experience to me, because I had the opportunity to do a lot of stuff from scratch, of building the airplane. Let's put it like this. Build the rocket ship. So as of today, I run a team that always varying in size because we are always hiring. But as of today, I think it's 11 engineers, and
nice.
I deal with things like authentication, authorization, data compliance. So those are the bits and bobs that I work on my day-to-day.
A couple of things that I'm interested in there. We're going to get to Hopin in the next couple of moments. You mentioned in there about Talkdesk, and you've obviously been on this journey before. It shaped you to be the engineer that you are today, as in seeing that growth period What's the thinking behind that? And obviously, probably Hopin shaped you even further, but help us understand that.
Yeah, so Talkdesk was a very intense experience because there's significant differences of the experience that I lived at Talkdesk from Hopin. So one thing, it was like we're pretty much all the same age at the time, give
Okay.
it or take. So it was a very young crowd. So this was in 2014. So I was like, what, 27 back then or something like that. It's a little bit younger than today. Still young, but
Yeah, you are.
it was like in my 20s, you know, it was a little bit different. And everyone around were more or less the same age.
Okay.
We're all in the same room. And whether you want it or not actually makes a little bit of a difference in the way you live this startup experience. I mean, remote has a lot of advantages, and we can go into that. And I'm a real believer in remote work, but it's just like there's trade-offs that are inherent. And the experience was super interesting because when I joined Talkdesk, was again, the company was already 2 years old. We have this tendency of kind of almost making these success stories like overnight success, you know, like started a startup and one day suddenly, like 3 days later or something like that, like boom, like damn, like 100 million in funding and I don't know how much in ARR and such a success story, but it's not like that ultimately. Like, you know, joined the company was already 2 years, so there was already a lot of established work that was done before I joined. And that was very different from the Hopin experience. So Talkdesk kind of introduced me to a lot of concepts on, you know, like caring about the customers, like deeply caring about the customers. When I joined Talkdesk, I was doing everything. I was doing support. I was participating in sales calls. I would like I would help I helped break the walls in the office. You know, like I'm serious. Like we helped break out walls in the office to expand it. So you get my point. Like it kind of like made me very aware of if you have to focus on what brings value to the company at this point, and not be just like in the kind of like in the realm of like technical details. And I love coding.
You just code,
yeah, exactly, for what it is. It really gives you perspective on all the other things that are part of the day-to-day of a company and that are the activities that create value besides just coding.
Yeah, that probably helped you develop some empathy, I'm guessing, for the customer part with the support and sales and what actually helps generate revenue for a company. So coming into Hopin, you talk about that boom moment and rounds and rounds of funding. Don't quote me on this at all, but I swear there was 2 or 3 in quick succession during the pandemic, and I was just like, I genuinely thought I was reading an article from I think 2 months before. I was like, wait, what? Another one?
Yeah.
So talk to us about that experience and talk to us a little bit about. So you were a virtual events company. Now you're an events company. So what's that shift there?
Well, so the world is changing dramatically, right? I mean, just imagine 2019 or early 2020, you know, compared to these days. It feels like the old, like planet Earth, you know, like old society or something like that. There are things that, you know, like we probably wouldn't imagine that we're living as of today. It's just barely more than 1 year ago. Like, look, face-to-face, like physical, real-world events are coming back. That's great. Yep. Honestly, I love being next to people, just grabbing a drink, chatting to people, getting to know people like face-to-face is an experience that it doesn't have a true replacement. Like, you know, like I would say that virtual events have things that are like, I would say that there's things that are better than face-to-face events, but there are things that are worse again. And the world is changing, and people do want also that face-to-face interaction, meeting people, networking, and everything. So, and we honestly, I think that Johnny, our CEO, like he knew this from day one. You know, like he knew this. Like physical events will come back. That doesn't mean that virtual events will go away. This is my genuine opinion. I think that people realize the potential, behind the virtual events. Because a little bit of a neglected area for quite some time. And people these days are like, no, like it really brings value. Like, I mean, let's just think about the super simple, like super straightforward use case. That is, I put up a conference, and why should I just restrain myself to, constrain myself to the people who live in this area, or when I know people can fly, but it's like, it's expensive. Not everyone will do it. When I can just pretty much, pay for a production and broadcast this on the web and sell tickets pretty much worldwide, get to people in any country in the world, have a much broader reach. So I think that is staying, and I think that Johnny saw that from the beginning. So we are indeed targeting today not only face-to-face events. We recently acquired a company that has been dedicating itself to that, called Boomset, and we are also entering in what people are calling hybrid events, right? Which is like doing a fusion between the experience of these two things. And we recently hosted Hopin's first hybrid event, Illuminate, just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, something like that. Recently, and it was a major success. I'd say it was a really good experience. I was online, like I was not there. I was in LA, and I didn't get to fly. It's a little bit tricky to get to the US these days, but it was incredible to see.
And what was awesome is you guys got the call up for TechCrunch Disrupt last year. I think it was last September. That must have been an awesome feeling. Again, another breakthrough moment. 2020 was the breakthrough moment, seemingly, understandably, for you guys.
TechCrunch was a big thing, definitely. Being able to, like, my parents are not very tech savvy, or even some people, like around in my life, and the ability to go to them and say, oh, it's the event you saw on Silicon Valley, like the TV series or something like that. We are hosting it this year. Just doing that reference is lots of people know the TV series, and I was like, oh, that's really, you're hosting that? It's a powerful thing. So yeah, we're really happy, really glad that TechCrunch partnered with us, and I attended the event. It was a really cool experience. It was a completely virtual event last year. Yeah, it was a really happy moment for the entire team to get the confirmation that we're going to be hosting TechCrunch. It's a big thing.
Nice. Help us understand, and this will probably fall into, I guess, a little bit more about your team. I know this anyway. I know some video companies. I know that the challenges around CDNs, other things associated with live video. Help us understand some of the technical challenges that Hopin have seen over the last 12 months, with that scale. Just dive into that a little bit more and help us understand a little bit what you guys at Hopin saw, built, and dealt with.
Sure. So I would say that this almost links a bit to the question you made before about, like, for instance, learnings that I had also at TalkTest. And Hopin confirmed that in some sense, like in other companies I worked for. But so one piece of advice I can tell to everyone starting is, like, don't reinvent the wheel, like stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Hopin didn't start with its own like video stack, with its own, like, lots of stuff was software as a service, right? We were paying for services from other companies. And I think that in 2020, like, that's, if you're not doing that, like, you are not heading for success in the beginning. Like, I think that there's a time and a place to, like, review that decision, like the vendors, the partners that you use. But, like, please start with software as a service, like, buy solutions, focus on the core of your business, like on your differentiator. Like, don't jump right away into thinking, oh, like, what, I can build like the best, most scalable video tech stack, that ever exists. Like, it makes no sense. Build a business, and like, you're gonna probably get lots of problems, and if you get lots of problems, it's because you get customers. If you get customers, you get money. So you get money to solve those problems. So it's kind of like how the loop should go, and not in a different direction. It shouldn't go from from the problems to the customers. To go vice versa. So that's like, yes, video broadcasting is a one aspect that scaling it is not easy. We of course that we started again with the SaaS. We now like have an in-house solution for video broadcasting. It requires, as you can imagine, like it requires specific skills, specific knowledge, right? There are areas of work in software development that everyone, I truly believe that anyone can pick up on anything pretty much, right? But it's just like if you find people who are familiar with a specific area that you need skills on, like it's just an advantage, of course. Like video is its own niche, and we have RTC and essentially. So yeah, like that was one of the challenges, like scaling our tech stack, making it robust, essentially as well. You have to realize one important thing about Hopin.
Did you say there's robust?
Yeah.
Just being clear. Okay, yeah, cool.
Robust, yeah. You have to realize one thing about, depending on your business, you will very rapidly realize if your business is kind of, let's call it mission critical or not.
Yeah.
What do I mean by this? It's like, if video goes down on Hopin, that's pretty much the equivalent of you are in a concert venue and suddenly the speakers like go off or the lights go off. It's that bad. It's just like suddenly you have like thousands of people in front of you, and it's terrible. Let's put it like this. So it's mission critical. So these things can't fail. There are businesses that operate in different ways. Like, I don't know, I'm going to throw things out of my head. Like if I submit an expense on Expensify or something like that, if it takes 10 seconds or 20 seconds to kind of get my information from the receipt, it doesn't make a huge difference. I want it to be fast, but it doesn't make a huge difference if it takes 10 or 20 seconds. So building that like the knowledge and the skill to build like something scalable and robust inside the company was one of the major challenges, and not only on video but other areas as well.
What was tough about it? Particularly, what was tough about it?
From a manager's perspective,
the concept itself, but I think the associated challenges that surrounded it as well.
Yeah, sure. From a manager's perspective, hiring is hard. Let me just tell you, right?
Yeah.
It's that's from a manager's perspective. That was building a team with the right skills to take on this and take on this fast was hard. But then we had, video broadcasting is hard. It takes a lot of bandwidth, takes a lot of CPU resources. It's its own niche. At the same time, we acquired other companies. There were companies joining the Hopin family that also have needs around data streaming, such as StreamYard, such as Jam, our meetings platform. So they also had work. So consolidating what each of us already had into something that was better than what each of us had was a good step, was a step in the right direction, but it didn't come for free. It's usually software development that is done in like lower level programming languages, like system programming languages, like either C, C++, Rust, Zig, things like that. I mean, in our case, it's mostly C++. So yeah, it's hard to find those skills in the market, and they are valuable and they are hot, as you can imagine, and it's really business critical, essentially, and that's pretty much it, I'd say.
What were some of the trade-offs that you had to make? Because seemingly there's acquisitions, integrations, there's hiring. How do you actually prioritize some of those trade-offs being mission critical? To use your analogy, that the plane's moving, so to speak, how do you actually, I guess, keep it in flight but I guess stay performant.
Yeah. It's whoa, like it's
Sorry, I've probably hit you with a big old question there. Actually,
no. It does require a lot of like synergy inside the company, definitely. But
yeah,
it's it really requires you focusing on integrating things at the right pace. So, for example, like we didn't like it was not the first day that after the day after like StreamYard joined us that we were like, let's integrate like all our infrastructure. Like it was
yeah,
not like that. If we talk a little bit more techy, like for example, I would say that this is analogous to something that concepts that people use in programming. So people say like, oh, keep your code dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. When like you move to like a services oriented architecture, namely to microservices. Actually, there are many scenarios where code repetition is actually better than essentially linking everyone to like dependencies, like to depend on the same thing, on the same code. So actually, there are many scenarios where repetition and duplication is better than than the effort of trying to make everyone being completely aligned and like working on the same thing. And I think that that's a lesson you quickly learn from very large companies. I'm pretty sure that if you go to like Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, they have multiple teams working on the exact same problems, and because the cost of like aligning all those teams is larger than the one that it gets from just like duplicating the efforts and the innovation that they get from that. So I'd say that was partially what we're doing here. Like we also have aspects of our infrastructure that we continue to develop like independently. So we didn't merge everyone and everything, every aspect, every technical aspect and organizational aspect of these companies into just one. No, it's just like we maintain some things separate, and I think that that's how it's going to be for in the long term for many aspects.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but you answered my why. I was going to dive in and say why. But thank you. You probably sussed that out in my eyebrows. You talk about synergy. You talk about communication flow. Hopin have, I guess, a reputation. They've built pretty much a remote first company. And that's quite iconic. Okay, to do that at such pace and at such scale, I've heard stories. I won't go into figures of just how many engineers you are hiring monthly. So, how do you ensure that you are scalable, as in people scalable, not tech scalable? Because onboarding, people understanding the culture and keeping those communication flows, that probably could be tougher than the technology part because you're all smart people, right?
It's as tough. And just a small correction, we are ultimately not remote first, we are remote only, right? So we really don't even have an office. I think there was people meeting in London even before I met, but as of today, it's really, really remote, right? Everyone is remote, at least at Hopin. I know that some of the companies that we acquired do have physical offices. It's as challenging as scaling the organization is as challenging as the actual tech challenges that you face. So I would say that was actually the part that it was more exposed ultimately, right, as an engineering manager and someone who's been here pretty much from the start of the management side of the company. There's so much to unpack here. Let me even think where to start on, because so let's just be honest. I'm going to use a term here that is kind of confusing, but it's almost like a controlled chaos. But it has to be. It's not the most, like from far, it looks a little bit like chaos. So and it's just normal. Like again, you don't get to scale a company from 30 people to, I don't know, we're probably like 750, give or take, as of today, in a year, and say, you know what? No, this was the most orderly experience and most calm and peaceful experience that I ever lived through. No, it's not the case. So here at Hopin, actually, their first week we do a thing that we call the Hopin Academy, and I don't even bother that much the engineers on my team on their first week, because the Hopin Academy is to get to know the product, get to know the company. So it's actually run by our people's team. So they are exposed to lots of things here in the company, how marketing works, how sales works. Get to know the company. It's kind of it's the Hopin university of things. And then they're starting as their second week, as they get into a team, lots of pairing, lots of ask me anything, check on people, because it's like you don't start from the assumption that people just ping you if they have questions, and this has nothing to do with they're being smart people or not. It has nothing to do with that. We are just there's inherently people who are more introverts, and should I ask this? I'm a little bit afraid of asking it. It's just normal. It's human condition. Just take it as human condition. So check on them, bring a mission to your team, bring a vision to your team. So explain where do you want to go and how are you doing to get there, essentially, which is the mission. So have those things in place, have a culture of transparency and communication, and you're going to get there. There's a lot, and lots of aspects that you have to build on top of this.
It is. I haven't seen that sort of growth, but I'm just I'm trying to comprehend it. Repetition, pairing. I think creating a safe landing for people is quite important. So I think the Hopin University, the pairing for the first 2 weeks. I was going to say, what it's like, as in coming into a company day one. There is so much change. Out of interest, is everything documented? As in, if you need to do X, go to this person. As in, just plain and simple, is there documentation for absolutely everything, or is there some ambiguity there?
We do our best. I would say there's a little bit of chaos, but I can give one thing. I can talk about one aspect that is very engineering focused that works really well inside Hopin. I actually brought this from my previous company, and I was working for a company called Salsify, and they had really strong practices on the engineering side. It was a place where I learned a lot. And I brought ADRs, architectural decision records, with me, the practice of writing those. And so I brought it to Hopin, and it's been a success. So we have a repository of documents explaining decisions that were made and the context they were made on, and why they were made, and quite a bit of a summary. We have a template for these things, but essentially it's the summary, the decision, and then the consequences of this decision. And you can go all decisions, technical decisions, not everyday decisions, as you can imagine. We take a lot of decisions that are ultimately not documented as ADRs, but the more meaty ones, they are there. Everyone can go there and read. It's just why did people go with this protocol, or why did we choose this database, or why did we select we're doing this? And it's there's an explanation, and that's really important. Capturing that, and the evolution of those decisions is really, really important. It gives you a lot of perspective, a good way of keeping what people call tribal knowledge inside the team.
Have you instilled that in your team, or you introduced that to Hopin as a collective?
I would say almost both, because when I introduced it, we were still a fairly small company, right? So I introduced this on the early days. So we're probably 30 engineers when I introduced this back then. Things were easier to introduce, indeed.
You're part of the furniture then.
Yeah, it was easier indeed. So that was good. For example, indeed, at the company I worked previously for, so there was no ADRs from the start. At some point, they were like invested on creating those, and it was great. But a lot of that tribal knowledge was in the minds of people, so you really had to go to people to understand a lot of past decisions. So so that was there are things that are introduced in my team that then we exported to the whole engineering organization. But this almost started as it's like I started by doing them. People were like, "Oh, that's valuable. Let's do them." That's it.
Nice. Okay. Well, we spoke about the collective Hopin journey. You've been there early days, engineered number 14. So we've probably seen the engineering challenges as a whole from that, I guess, software as a service conversation a little bit earlier, building robust infrastructure and being, let's say, mission critical. What are some of the engineering challenges in your teams? Are they around that, or are they slightly separate?
Well, it's. I mean, I can talk about maybe the challenges on like I can talk about challenges in several teams, but ultimately, like some of them are shared and some of them are not, right? So there's challenges that are shared, and I know that because I talk to the other engineering managers. They're my colleagues. We meet regularly, and some of the pains we feel them collectively. But some things, some aspects are kind of more specific. So where do you want me to dig deeper on this?
Sorry. So if I'm just clear on that, so I think we focused on you're looking after teams around authentication, authorization, and some other areas. So yes, completely appreciate they will, or other teams being they, probably have some of those challenges in their areas. What challenges or technical challenges do you find in those areas in and around your teams that focus on those areas?
I see. Yeah, the challenges in my team are that those aspects that, from a technical standpoint, these things that I just told you about, like again, authentication, authorization, data compliance, they are they are cross-cutting concerns. Like it's almost every request that gets into the application passes through authentication and authorization layers. Changes to our data model require, being kind of safe from then like a deletion perspective as people come to Hopin and they own their data, and to be GDPR compliant, they ask, please remove my data. So those things, from a technical perspective, it means that you have to balance the act of being the gatekeeper and not being a bottleneck. And this is a hard equilibrium to find, right? So you don't want that everyone just comes talk to you whenever they need small changes on the parts that ultimately you are responsible for, which is different from owning. Ownership and responsibility or accountability are slightly different and are different concepts. You don't want to be a bottleneck at the same time. You want people to be able to work in a distributed fashion. So one thing that I feel like it works really well is whenever you are a team working on these very kind of cross-cutting concerns, is get the tooling right. If you enforce the things at, for instance, a code level, it's just like the safer the environment you create, and by enforcing the rules and the guidelines that you need for people like your engineers to follow because of, for example, security reasons, the better. It's just it's a way it's you kind of multiplying yourself. It's your team acting as someone that is invisibly pairing with the other engineers in the organization by essentially guiding them through what they can do, what they can't do, how they should do things. That's super powerful. Invest heavily in tooling to scale on the organization so that you can keep focused on what you're actually doing, because let's not like lose sight of what we're doing here. As my team, for example, on the authentication side, what we want to do is to provide like a secure, privacy conscious, like a frictionless as possible authentication experience to customers. That's what we do, right? That's our objective, right? And then how we do it is the thing. Like those are the details again, like on how we kind of like empower other engineers inside the organization by giving them the proper environment for doing the right thing, for building it right, essentially.
Understood. Okay. What's one key bit of feedback or learning, if you like, even failure, that you could give to an individual, a team, or a company over the last 12, 18 months from what you've learned about Hopin? Obviously, your experience before has kind of set you up for a scale-up mindset. You've been knocking down walls and such. So help us understand the last 18 months and maybe a particular failure or moment that stands out that you'd probably want to give to someone.
That's a hard one to come up with, not because there's no failures, but because there's many, I would say, like almost day to day, you know. And but what are you looking for? So like more. So from my experience at Hopin, as some decision that I took and then ultimately, let's say, regretted it in hindsight, or
I quite like the ADR decision really early on. That's seemingly quite a good one if that's been rolled out across the business. But I mean, in a sense where it's like one of those oh shit moments. Don't do that again. Or oh wow, that really worked for us. That was just one of those off chance moments that you saw just create a lot of pain or remove a lot of pain.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's funny. Like our incidents channel was called "Oh shit" until recently we renamed it. Now, yeah. See, but it's really like incidents. Oh shit moment. That's it. I can tell you one thing that it's ultimately important. So one important aspect that I've seen from my experience as well is like in successful and mature engineering teams is how they release software. And there's no right way of releasing software, I'd say. It's like, again, you have to adapt to your reality. You know, like 20 years ago, people were releasing software in CDs and in floppy disks. You know, that was the reality they were living in. Like as of today, you know, I don't know, in the games industry, you still ship physical copies of things. So like saying, you know, like that continuous deployment is the only way of essentially like doing soft like distribution and releases, right? I would say it's not what I would say, but there are wrong ways of doing it, especially. So if you look at your context, there are wrong ways of doing it. And I would say that at Hopin, it was like as we were growing so fast and the organization was growing so fast, tech, hiring people, structure, and everything, we do put releases. Like we did create like the notion of releases. So we do releases inside the engineering team. So we do at this point, we do weekly releases with like we can still release hot fixes, but we have like this big weekly release. And we did that, like there was context that led to that decision, but that decision is hard to reverse.
Okay.
That decision is hard to reverse. Let's just face it. So going from we stopped deploying like every single like day or every other hour to a weekly release cycle and then coming back, it's hard. Long release cycles in such fast-paced companies, they are like almost like clashing forces essentially, because you want to move fast. You want people to build the right things. You want engineers to feel accountable for their outputs. You want them to be accountable for their outcomes, the outcome of what they're putting out there. And all that feeling of accountability and ownership is hard to embed into people if you just like you merge your pull request today and you see your code hitting production in 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was something that I can tell everyone's like, I know that there's a place and a time for doing releases, but move away from them as much as possible, which is what we are working now at Hopin to essentially like, again, like getting back to like daily, or like not daily, like my objective as an engineering manager is multiple per hour, essentially, honestly speaking. That's where I want to stop. I worked at companies where it was at will. It was like, oh, I'm going to deploy, I'm responsible for this as an engineer, like I'm going to do it. There are companies that only works until a certain scale as well. I think that past a certain scale, you have to invest in tooling to automate that process a little bit, but it has to be fast. So that was, from a technical standpoint, something that if I could go back in time, I would have said, like, let's endure the pains that we're suffering, and let's not just like fall into like the idea of creating a weekly release cycle, and let's fix that, work on fixing this and keeping like the daily release. Or exactly. For example, so that's just one, but there are many. There's definitely many.
Yeah, that's a good learning. I think that's a really useful takeaway. I'm going to include your LinkedIn page, so if there are people that want to reach out and pester you and take up all of your time for more learnings, that they can do that. Briefly before we cut off, where will we see Hopin in 12 months? You know, in confidence, what you can tell us, where will you see us? Obviously, we've spoken about this move from virtual events company to events company. There's going to be a hybrid model. Johnny's always thought that, but where do you think you could be in 12 months, or what's the message within the company?
Yeah, it's obviously a good question, and one that, let's just be honest, if you'd asked me 12 months ago, I would make and I would be completely unable to say that, like, no, in 1 year, I'm pretty sure we're going to have like, I don't know, 500 million in funding and 700 employees. It wouldn't even cross my mind, as you can imagine. But there are things I can tell you based on facts, right? So it's public that Hopin acquired multiple companies. So I'd say that one thing is we aim at being, first of all, all-in-one solution for events, being them virtual, being them like in person. So that's one thing. We are also aiming at being a multi-product company. Again, like StreamYard is an amazing product. Really, like I try it out. It's a really, really cool product. Really delights customers in the kind of broadcasting field. It's an amazing solution. We are investing in meetings as well with Jam. So we're also going towards a multi-product company, right? Becoming a multi-product company. I don't think Hopin will just stay in the events business. It's going to be like the events. It's going to continue to be, I would say, like one of our main focuses for sure. It's not going anywhere. We're still deeply investing in it, but we're going to diversify. And I think we're going to continue remote only, or I think that in this case we're going to forcefully move a little bit towards the remote first, because pretty sure that, again, the companies that we recently acquired, they have their physical offices, and they have their own cultures, and so we are super respectful of the cultures that these companies bring and their own identity. But yeah, that's how I think where we're going to go, like grow as a more mature engineering organization, like always learning every day, like be humble. Essentially, this is also one thing that Johnny preaches every single day. It's like all learning, all getting better every single day, and always being like customer focused. And that's, I would say, probably that's where you're going to find this in 12 months. I hope so.
Love that diversification, more product building, staying humble. Touching on the last point of being remote first, I always do this. We've got bundles and bundles of engineers that follow us, several thousand. There'll be people that know you. There'll be people that don't know you. They're obviously going to know a little bit more about you after this. But for people listening, what are you as a business looking for on the engineering front? Help us understand that, if possible, as succinct as possible, because I'm sure we could go down several routes here.
Yeah, sure. Like I would say, fairly simple one. People who like love their craft, who want to get better at the craft, who want to make those around them better at their craft, who wants to create an impact in the world, and who want to make part of like a kind of a rocket ship. That's it. That was probably the very small pitch and summary on what we are looking for when it comes to
that was succinct.
engineers.
Yeah, that was tech part. On the tech part, just a high-level overview.
Sure. Yeah, we Hopin on the backend side of things is mostly a Ruby house. We have a bit of also TypeScript and JavaScript running on Node, and on the front end is mostly React. But now, again, like because of the companies that we acquired, our tech stack grew with those acquisitions. So we do internally, we have people doing Clojure, we have people doing Python, we have people doing JavaScript. So there was that. Like, I am a Ruby lover. I am known as a Ruby lover. I'm actually really happy as well that we are bringing Clojure in, because I really love Lisps. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing. Again, I said there's also C++ in some areas of the stack, mostly connected with the video pipeline. That's pretty much it, what you're looking for.
So if you just love writing software, any language, remote first, come and talk to these guys and girls. What a journey. I just want to say a massive thanks for everyone listening. Like, share, subscribe to the video, come and show these guys and girls some love. And thank you. A big thank you, Joao.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a true pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
We'll
see everyone soon.
Thank you. All the best.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Enginears.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is enginears.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.